Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is dulcify. Let's take a look at some of the ways that we use this particular verb. The first definition or way to use dulcify is to mean to make something sweeter in taste. Now, many of you might have heard this verb, saw the word I chose for today, and thought, what is that? So I will note this is not a very common verb that we hear used in everyday English, particularly in the Midwestern United States where I am. It was far more popular 200, 300 years ago, and we'll look at some examples of that later. It does seem like most of the examples I could find really connected back to this first definition of sweetening something. A second way, though, you might hear dulcify used is to mean to calm or soothe someone or something. A third way that kind of ties back to the second one is to please or make something more agreeable, right? So with these last two definitions, I might think of maybe some uncomfortable emotions, so a situation that doesn't feel comfortable, and someone is trying to calm things or make some changes that make things more pleasant or more agreeable. You should know that dulcify is a regular verb. To make the progressive form, all I need to do is add ing to form dulcifying. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are going to be made by adding ed. But because our base verb ends in a y, we need to make a spelling change. We're going to drop the y, add an I, and then add ed. Our base verb, dulcify, I, ends in a vowel sound, and all vowel sounds are voiced. So our past tense ending is going to make a D sound. Dulcified, dulcified. Now, you'll be maybe relieved to know you don't have to learn any other meanings through phrasal verbs, and instead we can focus on looking at some real examples of dulcify as they appear in various sentences. The first example is a more modern one. So this is from 2018, and I found this example. The dish was dulcified with a balsamic vinegar glaze. This is an example of the simple past tense in the passive voice. I can tell that because I see a past form of be, which is was, and then I see the participle form of the verb. Now, this particular sentence is tying back to that idea of sweetening, right? And that might be clear because the example comes from a recipe, right? Many online recipes, actually, I have found or discovered through a little investigation here, do use this word to note when something is being sweetened. If you follow online recipes, you know, many of them begin with some paragraphs at the beginning where the person describes what they did or what they were inspired by, and that's where this sentence comes from. So this was a recipe for some grilled tomatoes and basil zucchini noodles with a balsamic glaze. I didn't make it, but I thought it was a nice example of our verb. The second example I have here, can you sublime and dulcify? This is an example of a modal. So I've got the modal can. This is for ability. This is a really old example from 1610 from a particular novel. Okay. And you might be looking at that sentence and thinking, I have no idea what this means. So here, the word sublime is being used to mean that uh, one's morals or spiritual sort of sense are being elevated to some sort of high degree of excellence here. So, um, the context of this particular usage was in a much longer passage that I thought was actually going to be far more confusing because there's just older words used that are less common and less known. I would say this particular usage, though, is tying back more to the second and third meanings that we looked at: calming, soothing, pleasing someone. Right? I think pleasing would tie in well here when we think about elevating kind of our morals or our spiritual sense to a higher degree. The third example I have here, they are dulcified to a deplorable degree. This is an example of the simple present. It's also in the passive voice. I can see my present form of be, and then I can see the participle form of the verb. This came from a magazine article called High Life in the Last Century. It was written in 1844. And again, I think this came from a larger paragraph where they were talking about some of the steps women took to appear beautiful in the 1700s. So, this particular usage, I would say, goes back to that idea of being pleasing. Um, and yeah, kind of an agreeable, right? Everyone wanted to please others or have their appearance be pleasing to others. The last example, again, something a bit more recent. It's a poem, and the line from that poem was, "When she walked out, she dulcified the air." This is an example of the simple past tense, but here we're in the active voice. So we're just seeing that past tense form of our verb. And without looking at the full context of this poem and the ideas being con- shared with it might be possible that we're saying, like, she makes the air sweeter, right? You might share that thought when you're in love. Could also be the calm or soothing sort of definition or usage. So we might be describing another person having kind of a calming effect on the environment around her. So, I hope those examples help you understand a bit how you might hear or see this particular verb used. Again, I feel like it's most likely uh, going to be something you see if you happen to be studying older forms of literature. This verb was far more commonly used, again, 16, 17, 1800s than it is in our modern times. Now, I just have one related word for us to look at, and it's the noun form dulcification. Dulcification, right? So this is going to relate back to the first meaning we studied with the verb. And so it's the act or the action of making something sweeter. An example of this might be, not every coffee drink demands dulcification. I actually saw that in a more recent article as well. Again, sort of suggesting here, many people have gotten really into kind of fancy coffee drinks that have been sweetened. This sentence is saying we don't have to do that every time we drink coffee. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.